Hi, I'm Andy Findlay, and today I'm at Makins Fishery and I'm going to run you through a few tips on fishing the method feeder. See, I've got a fish on now. He's a bit beat. I'm keeping the rod low until you get it within netting range, and then that's the time to raise the rod ready for the landing net. Just keep constant pressure on it. Once you get its head up and it takes a gulp of air, normally it will just waddle in. And here's a great tip, is when you've got it in the net, try and keep tension to the rod tip, because if your line's spun, you'll get it wrapped around the end of the rod and you could cause a break off. So just slide the fish in with the fish in the water. You have to let a bit of line off with a drag and then just lift the fish out of the water close to the net so you don't damage your handle. And as long as you've got some tension to the tip and the fish, not too much, probably a bit too much there's no way that line can wrap around the end of your tip and cause you to snap the end of the tip off. Second tip, I'm about to load my method feeder. Now this is really important. A lot of lads rush this, not thinking it's that important, but even if you're catching a fish or chuck, I still take the time to load the feeder. First of all, my favourite hook bait is a single 4mm Pro Expander. Obviously that needs to go on first, and I just revolve it around the outside of the pellet. No quick stops, just directly on the pellet, size 18 kkh. And to load the feeder, I've got my tub of soaked 2mm Thin Perfect pellets here. First of all, I'm going to fill the feeder so it just covers the insert, and it's important to compress the pellets when you do this. And then what you need to do is just offer the pellet into the middle of the mould, like so, and then put a good heap on. The second helping wants to be a good heap, and then just turn the feeder over onto the heap so you encircle all the bait and trap it all in, and a good firm press with your 2 thumbs, and rather than pull the feeder out of the mould, just turn it upside down, keep pressing the button, and then you'll find you have your perfect loaded feeder every time. Third tip, I'm just about to cast. Now this is the real nitty gritty. It needs to be on the mark. I don't want to put myself on the spot too much, but if you look over at the point of the island where I'm casting, it's hard to see really from here, but now the sun's turned round, but there's 2 small trees on the water's edge. I'm trying to get in the middle of them, just in the middle of them ducks that you probably see on the lake, but tight to the island. So first of all, I'm going to wind the feeder up. I think between 2 and 3 foot hanging down is the right length before you make the cast. And then hopefully, if you're like me, when you've undone the bail arm, you hold the line like that rather than like that. If you hold the line like that with your long finger on the spool, you can feel exactly when to let go of the line. I'm just taking the wind into consideration because it's swirling all over the shop here. 1 minute it's that way, now it's that way, so I need to compensate for that. So just before you cast, keep an eye on the wind, and then you need to adjust accordingly. So when I go back, I can't really explain the cast while I'm doing it because it don't take long enough. So when I go back, I'm just going to go back and then forward in one. I'm not waiting behind me, and I'll let the feeder go, and I'm watching it as it's flying through the air, and I need to stop it on the clip with a rod somewhere up here. And just as I feel it stop on the clip, I put my rod down, and that should deliver the feeder right next to the bank. As soon as you've cast the feeder in, put the rod on the rest and sink the line just by burying the tip of the rod under the water, and maybe no more than half a turn of the reel handle. Bring the rod tip out the water and you're ready instantly for a bite. Tip number 4, you can see that my rod hasn't got hardly any angle between the feeder and the rod tip. It's in a straight line, and that's really important for my way of fishing the method when fishing up to an island. If you can imagine, there's a set distance from my rod to the island, so that length of line is like a tape measure. It's the same distance. So once you've made the correct cast with hardly any bow in it, and you tie without, once it's the feeder's landed on the bottom, I've got a fish on, so I've got to reel in this time. But what I was saying about the length of the cast to the island, that line is a tape measure. So if you make the correct cast, that distance is always the same. If you're clipped up to the right distance, the length is always the same, so it will ensure that your feeder lands on the island every time. Tip number 5, the tip's just lifted up. It hasn't gone round because I like to fish the feeder, the method feeder, with the rod pointing straight at the feeder, so it's obviously not going to go round. It's going to lift up or even drop back. As soon as that, just pick the rod up, no striking, don't want to be striking, else you risk breaking off. And while you're trying to coax the fish towards you, so just keep the rod low, and as long as it's bending like it is there, the rod's doing its job. It's fighting against the fish, and there's no danger or very little danger of the hook pulling out. If you start pointing the rod at the fish when you're playing the fish, then there's not much give in the length of the line, and there's a good chance of pulling out the fish. For the next tip, when you've unhooked your fish, don't throw it in your keep net or drop it from any height. Just simply put it back in your landing net and just offer it inside your net. Fish welfare is everything.
Hi guys, sorry to interrupt this video. It's just a reminder to make sure you like the video, subscribe to Preston Innovations YouTube channel, and make sure you hit the notification bell to make sure you never miss another upload.
So the next tip is I'll briefly run through my setup, what I use for a 40-yard cast when fishing the method feeder on my favourite lake 2 at Makins. My rod is a new Superior X, absolutely brilliant rod, very lightweight, superb action, does the job perfectly. That's matched to a Centris NT320, which is the smallest size. A lot of good anglers use the 420, which is the size bigger, but what I find that does, it spoils the feel of the rod. It's a really light, expensive rod this, and it's a joy to play a fish on it, and hopefully the rod's in your hands playing fish more than it is waiting for a bite in the rest. So that's why I use the lighter model reel. It does the same job basically. The spool's a bit smaller, but that's all. Loaded with 6 pound sinking feeder mono. That is my favourite choice for feeder fishing. It's a nice, already said about the action, really smooth action, ideally suited for anything up to 60 yards, let's say. The tip's quite important, but all three tips that are supplied with this rod blend in really nice with the rod. But normally on a cheaper rod, let's say, the middle tip would be the one you go for, which is round about 1.5 ounce to 2 ounce rating. Down from the tip, I'm using the ICS 30 gram small size Dura method feeder today, and it's a really simple setup. Nothing complicated about it at all. The line runs through the feeder to a method quick change bead, and I've got a 4-inch hook length to a KKH size 18 hook for my 4mm expanded pellet I'm using. So it's a really enjoyable outfit to fish with. It's just made for the job. And for the final tip, I think it's really important and helps my style when I'm fishing the method to let the rod fish itself. You can see that it's not across my legs. I see some anglers have it here with the big angle. I've already mentioned about the straight line, got a fish on, so I've got to reel in. But the rod fishing itself makes it more pleasurable because you can help yourself to a cup of tea. If you're not getting that many bites in the day, help yourself to a cup of tea, adjust any tackle on your bait tray. There's several little jobs you can be doing while the rod's fishing itself. If you're going to do this, which is really important, and I've got a fish on at the time, but I can still demonstrate it, my feeder arm has been cut to the length so that when I put it on the arm, on the rod rest, the ring is there. So if you are making yourself a cup of tea, you don't want your rod going in with a fish on. You know, you get a savage take, it could slide the rod into the water, but that prevents that from happening. So there you go, another beautiful makings carp. See you next time.